things are different now from even when Walt produced the Walt Disney Corporation. In this year now, we have a massive system to regulate creativity. A massive system of lawyers regulating creativity as copyright law has expanded in unrecognizable forms, going from a regulation of publishing now to a regulation of copying, the things that computers do when you boot them up, going from copies to not just copies of the original work, but even derivative works on top of it, going from 14 years to, for new works produced by a real author, there are fewer and fewer of those people out there, life plus 70 years. That's the expansion of law, but also there's been an expansion of control through technology. Right? First of all, this reality of opaque creativity, you know that as proprietary code. Creativity where you don't get to see how the thing works, and the law protects the thing you can't see. It's not Shakespeare that you can study and understand because the code is by nature open. Nature has been reformed in our modern technological era, so nature can be hidden, and the law still protects it. And not just through the protection, but through increasing control of uses of creative work. Here's my Adobe ebook reader, right? Some of you have seen this before, I'm sure. Here's Middlemarch. This is the work in the public domain. Here's the, quote, permissions. A lawyer had something to do with this, that you can do with this work in the public domain, right? You're allowed to copy 10 selections into the clipboard every 10 days. Like, who got these numbers? I don't know. But you can print 10 pages of this 4 million page book every 10 days, and you're allowed, feel free, to use the read aloud button to listen to this book, right? Now, Aristotle's Politics, another book, in the public domain, never really protected by copyright. But with this book, you can't copy any text into the selection. You can't print any pages, but feel free, you can listen to this book aloud. And then, to my great embarrassment, here's my latest book, right? No copying, no printing, and don't you dare use the technology to read my book aloud. Now, I have a sing button in the next version of the Adobe ebook reader, but the point is that control is built into the technology. Booksellers in 1760 had no conception of the power that you coders would give them someday in the future, and that control adds to this expansion of law. Law and technology produces together a kind of regulation of creativity we've not seen before, right? Because here's a simple copyright lesson. Law regulates copies. What's that mean? Well, before the internet, think of this as the world of all possible uses of a copyrighted work. Most of them are unregulated. Stop talking about fair use. This is not fair use. This is unregulated uses. To read it is not a fair use. It's an unregulated use. To give it to someone is not a fair use. It's unregulated. To sell it, to sleep on top of it, right? To do any of these things with this text is unregulated. Now, in the center of this unregulated use, there's a small bit of stuff regulated by the copyright law. For example, publishing the book. That's regulated. And then, within this small range of things regulated by copyright law, there's this tiny band before the internet of stuff we call fair use. Uses that otherwise would be regulated, but that the law says you can engage in without the permission of anybody else. So, for example, quoting a text in another text, that's a copy, but it's still a fair use. That means the world was divided into 3 camps, not 2. Unregulated uses. Regulated uses that were fair use and the quintessential copyright world. 3 categories. Enter the internet. Every act is a copy, which means all of these unregulated uses disappear. Presumptively, everything you do on your machine, on the network, is a regulated use. And now it forces us into this tiny little category of arguing about, what about the fair uses? What about the fair uses? I would say the word, I'm not. To hell with the fair uses. What about the unregulated uses we had of culture before this massive expansion of control? Now, unregulated uses disappear. We argue about fair uses, and they find a way to remove fair use, right? Here's a familiar creature to many of you, right? The wonderful Sony Aibo pet. which you can teach to do all sorts of things. Somebody set up a wonderful set, ibopet.com site, to teach people how to hack their dog. Now remember, their dog, right? And this site actually wanted to help you hack your dog to teach your dog to dance jazz. And remember, Europeans are sometimes confused about this, but it's not a crime to dance jazz in the United States, right? This is a completely permissible activity, even for a dog to dance jazz. Georgia, there's a couple jurisdictions I'm not sure about, but mainly dancing jazz is an okay activity. So ibopet said, here's how to hack your dog to make it dance jazz. If anything, it would be a fair use of this piece of plastic that costs over $1,500. You would think this is a fair use. Letter to the site. Your site contains information providing means to circumvent IBO-WAR's copy protection protocol, constituting a violation of the anti-circumvention provisions of the DMCA, even though the use is fair use. The use is not permitted under the law. Fair use. Erased by this combination of technological control and laws that say don't touch it. Leaving one thing left in this field that had three: control. Copyright, controlling creativity. Now, never, here's the thing, you've got to remember, you've got to see this. This is the point, and World of Jack Valenti misses this. Here's the point, never has it been more controlled, ever. Take the addition, the changes to copyright's term, take the changes to copyright scope, put it against the background of an extraordinarily concentrated structure of media, and you produce that fact that never in our history have fewer people controlled more of the evolution of our culture, never. Not even before the birth of free culture. Not in 1773 when copyrights were perpetual, because again, they only controlled printing. How many people had printers? You could do what you wanted with these works. Ordinary uses were completely unregulated. But today, your life is perpetually regulated in the world that you live in. It is controlled by the law. Here is the refrain. Creativity depends on stopping that control. They will always try to impose it. We are free to the extent we resist it, but we are increasingly not free. You, or the GNU, you can pick, build a world of transparent creativity. That's your job. This weird exception in the 21st century of an industry devoted to transparent creativity, free sharing of knowledge,